That's it.
Thanks, Kelson. But you can edit out this front stuff until we get to okay, people are coming in now.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm deleting your group after this. Don't worry. People get very upset when I add people in the groups. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay, evening everyone. I see we have about 14 people joined on. We're going to give it another minute or two until some more people join us before we get started. In fact, I've got an idea. While we wait, while we give it a few minutes, I'm gonna launch this poll just to get a sense as to who we have here. So we have a minute or two. Just I thought it'd be interesting to see if you see this poll. So all of you that are here, you've got one of 4 or 5 options. Which best describes it? Just be interesting to get a sense of the people in the meeting. And we'll give it a couple of minutes to get, I see half of you have responded already. We have 17 people, 11 of you have replied, 12. I see Frederick, you got a hand up. Frederick, you want to say something? No. Okay. So while we have 19 of you, just I'll get started shortly. Just some suggestions for how we do this meeting. You're all, if you can, be on mute. And if you don't, I'll put you onto mute other than the speakers. There is a chat function. Hopefully you can see the chat function. So please feel free to use that chat function. We're going to have the inputs, and then we'll keep the questions and the discussion to the end of the various inputs. Okay, we've had 14. Let's give it another few moments. Very few new residents. I'll share the results. In fact, I'm going to end the poll now, and just for interest, you can hopefully see the results here. Quite a few old hands, a couple of you from more than 20 years, and then a few of you that are external to Scarborough, but the majority of us are long-standing Scarborough residents. Okay, let me stop sharing that. So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to join us on a glorious evening. We've got 4 speakers. We're going to be talking about alien invasives. I think you've seen the brief bios of each of the speakers. All residents of the area, 3 who live in Scarborough and 1 who's just outside Scarborough, sharing different perspectives on alien invasives, some of the challenges around them and some of the solutions to addressing them. The approach that we're going to take is they each have about up to 10 minutes to give some input. 2 of them are going to be sharing PowerPoint presentations, 2 are going to be speaking a bit more informally. So we'll take 10 minutes each, and then at the end we'll have questions. If you've got anything you want to say, you can put them in chat. Otherwise, we'll moderate the questions for discussion after the various inputs. So we'll start with Lee Jones, followed by Louise Stafford, then Jess Tyrrell, and then Mark. So Lee, I'll hand over to you if you want to get started. Lee.
Thanks so much. I'm very, very grateful. Good evening, everyone. I'm wanting to speak as an overview on invasives and aliens and why they're actually a problem in Scarborough. And if you'll bear with me, it's going to take us a second or two just to set up my PowerPoint. And of course, the PowerPoint is not available. try that again, shall we? Sorry, it all worked perfectly. There we go. How's that looking?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Lee. Go for it.
Okay. Just in general, I think a lot of folks are not 100% sure of the whole concept of aliens. What are aliens? How alien are aliens? Why should we bother? There's so many different terms that are used to describe aliens. Alien invasive plants, alien invasive animals, animals that are out of place, plants that are out of place. You can call them foops if you like. One could call them exotic because they come from somewhere else. They're naturalized, feral, weedy, ornamental, invader, invasive. It's actually, there's so many different aspects to it. It's much easier to simply just ask what's indigenous. And indigenous species really, historically, are natural in a particular area. Any plant or animal that's been introduced into that area is a foop. It's something, it's fauna or flora out of place. And even out of our most useful species are foops, rice, wheat, cows, horses, pets. You know, we have some foops that really end up being highly problematic.
Sorry, we seem to have lost Lee. Am I the only one that can't hear Lee?
Yeah, I also can't hear it, John.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Lee, I don't know if you've got anything else running in the background. If you can turn that off, perhaps.
Alien plants are brought in through horticulture, more through agriculture. Nothing at all running in the background here.
Okay. Maybe turn your video off and just keep the thing on and see if that helps with bandwidth. Still don't have fiber going good here. Okay, sorry about that, Lee. Go ahead. And I dropped the connection. Oh, she disappeared completely.
Am I back up?
Yep, go for it. Your video's there, but if we can share the screen, let's hopefully this works this time.
I'm sorry, so sorry. I don't know what happened. We have had issues with connectivity.
Okay.
As I was saying, many of the typical plants come from other countries, whether they're food plants, ornamentals, or what have you. And a lot of people are so familiar with these plants that they feel that they want to hang on to them. They grew up with them. Their early childhood memories are associated with them.
I'm afraid, Lee, we're losing you again.
There's a certain resistance to getting involved with the speech. Folks get kind of a tea. If you can hear me.
Yeah, we lost you, but let's try again. Keep going. Maybe turn your video off.
Am I back?
Yep.
I'm suggesting, yeah, turn my video off. And how's that? Does that work?
Yeah, keep going. Keep going, Lee. Oh boy.
Suggesting that I might need to move to a different location. It's working.
Okay, why don't you try that? And Louise, would you be able to, if Lee's going to take a moment to move to a better, is that, Lee, will that take you long, or are you going to just go around the corner? Louise?
Yes,
I'm
I'm
just-
happy
Okay,
to
Lee?
step in if Lee's taking a while.
Okay. To walk to another room.
Okay. So let's take Louise because of the time. Louise, if you want to step in, and then we'll wind back and get Lee's input. Louise, go for it. Let's hope we have good connection.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a pity that Lee cannot do her talk before mine because it will fit, it's very complementary. But I'm going to talk about water scarcity, invasive trees, the relation between the two, and what this means for Cape Townians. It's quite a loaded topic, so I'm going to try not to be too technical, and I'm also going to try and cover as much as possible, just to give you context, and these are the points that I'll be talking to, is firstly to understand where our water come from, and what the state of our source water areas are, also known as catchments. And then when we talk about the impacts of invasive plants on water, we need to find a way of quantifying that to make a solid case, and that's scientifically based. And I'll share 2 examples, and then talk about the numbers. What does it cost to control those plants in our catchments? What's being done currently, and what does it mean for us? So where does our water come from? 87% of Cape Town's water come from outside the municipal boundaries. Cape Town, the catchments that are outside the municipal boundaries are managed by the Department of Water and Sanitation. According to the Water Act, all water belongs to the government. So the Department of Water and Sanitation is the mandated department. They then sell the water to the users. Cape Town is a user. Cape Town is a water services provider. So Cape Town buys the water from Water Affairs and sell it. They treat it, they distribute it, and they sell it to the users. The system that supply the water to Cape Town and its neighbours is called the Western Cape Water Supply System. And the picture on the left just shows you what the system looks like, and it consists of multiple surface water dams. On the right hand side are the 5 major dams, and I also added the Atlantis aquifer there because that is a managed aquifer, meaning that the treated household and industrial water from Atlantis goes into a treatment facility. It enters the catchment, the aquifer to ponds, and then it gets filtrated back. So this is a prime example of how it should be having a recharge aquifer. So the rest of the dams are managed by the Department of Water and Sanitation, and the Wemmershoek Dam and Steenbras Dam supply Cape Town of water, so does the Atlantis aquifer, but Voelvlei, Theewaterskloof and Burke River dams, they are shared dams with agriculture and other municipalities. So the Water and Sanitation Department, Water Affairs, allocate the water to the different users. And I have to say at this stage, it's important to know that the system is already over allocated. So they allocate more water to the users than is available in the system. Cape Town's annual allocation is almost 4 billion litres per year. And most of it is source water, surface water, 98%. In other words, it comes from dams. Only 2% is from aquifers. So in it was predicted that Cape Town will run out of water by 2021. the city had to make a plan to avoid this situation. The city decided to look at augmentation schemes such as water desalination, groundwater exploration, more dams, increasing the Voorvlei Dam wall. But then the drought happened, and the city's water demand management plans that they implemented as far back as 2014 brought the water demand down by 40%. But when the drought happens, the city had to push all the plans forward and to avoid the day zero. So these plans included desalination, so they were temporary desalination plants, and then the table mounted aquifer drilling in the borehole, or the drill that you see on the right hand side is behind Steenbras Dam. So the city's long-term plans are looking at a mix of grey and green infrastructure to avoid another situation that we will run out of water. But let's go and have a tour and look at our catchments. As I said, most of the catchments are 78% of the catchments outside the city boundaries, and it's out of sight, out of mind. Unless you get in a car and drive to Franschhoek or Verleersdorp and Grabouw, you won't see the dams. And also, it's very mountainous and it's very difficult to see really what's going on. So the green that you see here are all pine trees. And 2/3 of Cape Town's catchments are invaded by pines and other invasive trees, but mainly pines. And if we look at the dams now and we say, but actually it's not a problem because the dams are 98% full. And so what's the problem with invasives? The water reached the dams. So invasive trees do the most harm during the summer seasons when we need that trickle of water that keep coming into the dams. But if you have catchments that look like this, the invasive trees use that water and it never reaches the dams. So we went and we quantified what the water losses are, and I will share a bit about that. So this is the current situation at the Theewaterskloof Dam. So you'll see there's the Theewaterskloof Dam in the back, and everything that you see here in the front is invasive trees, and this is mostly black wattle. So let's look at how we quantify the impact of invasive plants on water. I'll tell you about two examples. The one is on the Atlantis aquifer, and the other one is on on surface water dams, the Theewaterskloof and Berg and Steenbras, as I referred to. So let's look what we did at the Atlantis aquifer. We used a year-long research project. Drilled holes in Port Jackson tree, put probes in, and measured the evapotranspiration over 4 seasons. And we called that sap flow monitoring. We also took rainfall into account, and then we used models to determine the impact of invasive plants on groundwater. Just quickly, this is where the Atlantis aquifer is. So if you drive up the west coast, that N7 goes on as you're driving over the aquifer. So this is the town of Atlantis. The treated water goes into water treatment works, and then it gets go back into the aquifer and gets pumped back into Atlantis. So the study has shown that we lose between 830,000 liters, 830,000 and 2 million liters a year per hectare of invasive mature Port Jackson. And the reason for that is Port Jacksons have quite a big root system, much a deeper root system than fynbos, for example, and one mature tree in the conditions where the water level are less than 10 meters deep can use 30 liters of water per year, per day. So these two graphs, just look at the red lines. The one on the left is, this is a study that we undertake to look at the impacts of invasive trees on surface water. And on the left-hand side, we look at if we don't do anything about the infestation that I showed you the pictures of, the invasive trees will keep spreading, it will become denser, and it will increase over the next, by almost 70% from the current infestation over a 30-year period. The effect of water is on the right-hand side. So as the invasive trees get denser and more, and they spread, the available water get less and less because the invasive trees use more water. So the findings is we did a study to look at how much water are we actually losing, and the studies have shown that we lose 55 billion liters of water every year, and if nothing is done about it, the water losses will double by 2045. So to put this in context, it's 2 months water for Cape Town that we lose every year as a result of the alien plants in the catchments. So if we look back at where we were 2 years ago in 2018, this is the Theewaterskloof Dam. And for a city that face situations like this, there will be another dry spell. And if we cannot afford to lose water in the catchments as a result of catchment degradation. So I am from the Nature Conservancy, and what we did is, it's not that there's nothing being done. The Working for Water program has been working in the catchments for over 20 years, but studies have shown that the problem is getting worse, despite the fact that millions of rands are being pumped into the catchments. So we worked with multiple stakeholders, province, the Department of Water and Sanitation, the City of Cape Town, and the private sector. And we developed a business case that we launched in 2018. And the business case looked at where can we get the highest return on investment. And it determines that by investing in 32% of the Western Cape water supply system, we can gain 55 billion liters of water every year. Then we took that amount of water, or the water gains, and we compared that with the other options that the city is considering: desalination, groundwater exploration, water reuse, full flow scheme. And the graph on the right shows that investing in nature is the most cost-effective and sustainable investment. In fact, it costs 1/10 of the cost that the city planned to invest in bringing other water on tap. And I'm not saying that clearing invasive plants is the only option, but what we can look at is to avoid some of or push back some of the other options, because if we clear the catchments, we bring in 55 billion liters of water into the system that's currently being lost. So are we taking action? This is just above the Theewaterskloof Dam. It's above one of the rivers that feed the dam, the Toys River. And this is the infestation level. It's just pines, and this is what it currently looks like. And you can see how far it goes back into the background. So what is being done? The business case has shown that if we want to turn the situation around with all things, all the limitations with trained teams, with just practicalities, we can clear 54,300 hectares in 6 years, and then we've got to maintain it for 30 years. So it's important to maintain it, but the upfront cost is that the first 6 years is the most expensive. And in order to reach that target, we have to clear 9,050 additional hectares every year while we're maintaining the cleared areas. We started working in 2019. Just before lockdown in March, we reached 8,600, and I'm sure that we would have made it, but we had to withdraw the teams. And we now have 9,400 hectares to clear this year. So we hope to reach that target so that we can clear that 54,000 hectares over the 5-year period. So we're also working together with different other institutions, City of Cape Town, working on fire, WWF, and Cape Nature. And we looked at the 7 priorities and we divided it up amongst the partners, and each partner took responsibility for for one of the priority areas, and we trained high-angle teams. Like camp, Ivan Groenhoff was instrumental in that. He helped them, teach them what to do when they camp, leave no trace, etc. And then we monitor the impact. So we have paired, what we call paired catchment. We look at the invaded catchment, and we look at we cleared one half of the catchment, keep manage or keep monitoring the impact, and then we have a reference site. This is quite a heavy topic, so I'm not going to go into this, but what I'm trying to show here is we have a paired catchment experiment where we look at the before and after clearing, so that we can have empirical evidence of the impacts of the clearing. So then we measure, we have 6 monitoring stations where we monitor the water flow and temperature, and then we get this type of reading. It takes this, there's a data logger in this thing, and it takes a reading every 10 minutes. We download the data and we will track this over a period of 6 years. So what will it cost? It will cost net present value 372 million rand over 30 years to reclaim 100 billion litres a year and keep the water, keep claiming the water benefits keep increasing while the costs come down. So if you look at this graph, it shows you the high impact phase is the first 6 years. And there we need 260 million rand. This is net present value. And then once we get to that 54,000 hectares, if we're able to keep the on target, the costs come right down, where this line shows that the water benefits keep increasing. So why is it so expensive? It's expensive because it's remote. We need specialized teams to access the areas. That we need 350 workers, and about 100 of them are highly specialized. It cost 260,000 rand to train one team and equip them with these specialized equipment. So that's just the training, and then the deployment and accessing the areas is the rest of the cost. So the City of Cape Town realized that investing in nature is it provides the highest return on investment, and the city, in addition to their augmentation plans like desalination, now committed 50 million rand over the next 3 years to invest outside their boundaries, because they realized if they don't do that and keep losing water and then try and bring water in the system, that's very expensive, is not a wise thing to do. So the city is on board, so is government and the private sector. And we want to avoid, what does this mean for Cape Townians? We want to avoid a situation like this. And if we get another drought, which we will, and the catchments are cleared, we know we can buy, or we can win, gain almost 2 months of water before it starts raining again. So this is my final slide. What does this mean for us? Remove invasive plants. Don't introduce invasive plants, rather introduce indigenous species, save water. The system is already over allocated, so it's essential for us to keep saving water as if we're facing a day zero. Spread the message and not the invasives.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Louise. A sobering reminder of the scale of the challenge and some, I guess, exciting potential for us to overcome that. Thanks, Louise. I'm going to ask Lee, do you have a better connection? Are you happy to give some framing, and then we'll come and take the next 10 and have some questions. Lee.
I'm good. I'm sitting on top of my router.
Brilliant. Okay, go for it.
So, and we've turned the gaming computer off. So hopefully that was what was causing. It all seems to be good. Can I share my presentation?
Go for it.
Do you want me to restart and run through it very, very, very quickly from the top, or should I?
I think we're about you.
Carry on from where I left off.
Second slide, I think where you were. I think we've got most of the intro.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So just an understanding of what some of the differences between indigenous and alien plants. You've now heard a whole lot of the information on a larger scale, on a more regional scale from Louise, and this is bringing it down into a garden context. Sort of, you understand what an indigenous species is, and you understand that an alien or exotic should quite simply not be there. One of the things that is quite concerning is that alien plants don't really have natural controls or natural enemies. We ourselves, as humans, we have to be the primary controls. And within a garden context, that doesn't happen so well. So non-invasive species that you plant in your garden probably don't get too weedy. They don't end up being producing viable seeds. The seeds might die quickly, and the seeds don't necessarily spread too far. But as you saw from what Louise was showing you, things like those pines, those seeds spread kilometers at a time with one single high wind event. And for other species that are distributed by birds, those species are distributed many kilometers at a time. And those sorts of aspects in terms of the difference between non-invasive or non-weedy and the weedy and invasive species are the ones that we particularly need to look at as gardeners and as Scarboroughs who care about our village and about our local environment. Some of the worst local baddies, there are so many. This is just literally a run through of some of them. The typical baddies are the acacias, Brazilian peppers, which have been removed from the wetland, bugweed, which occasionally rears its head, manitocas. There are so many around the village because they're planted as something which provides a hedge. Syringa trees, agaves, apuntias, which a lot of people think are indigenous, nicotiana, cestrum, oleander, caprosma, and then there's also a number of others as well, things that have berries that get spread, hackleas, and then eucalyptus, and of course the invasive pines that spread all over the peninsula, and the eucalypts which spread along the river courses. We've also got a number of herbaceous and shrubby species that are really quite problematic. There's kikuyu all around the wetland areas, which is really concerning. There's kikuyu at Chisterskraal. There's morning glory, the Ipomere and convolvulus species that are spreading in various parts of Scarborough in gardens, but also outside of gardens because they're being spread by fauna that take the seeds. There's a very nasty, very beautiful, but very nasty purple flowered species called Patterson's curse, which has been quite well controlled, thankfully, but 2 or 3 years ago, it was absolutely rampant all around the southern peninsula, including around Scarborough. This year is the turn of the wild mustards. Almost everything that you're seeing as a sort of lacy yellow looking thing as you drive in and around the village and the South Peninsula is not indigenous. It's in fact a wild mustard, and they've just gone completely ballistic this year. There's things that look very, very much like indigenous malvas or malva family, even geraniums, but they're not, and they are very invasive, especially along the beach. If you walk along the beach, you'll see them in flower at the moment. Malva, dendromorpha. Watercress, that stuff that's in Pound Stream, Plectranthus barbatus, Lantana camara, Spartium gentium. I could actually probably spend a full 10 minutes just citing some of the exotic species that actually are causing problems and are invading in different things. The bottom line, as you heard from Louise, there are a lot of problems. Invasive species, whether they come from another country or continent, or from just a different ecozone in our country or in our continent, disrupt ecological processes, they damage soils, they add too much nitrogen, eucalypts add toxic substances that are phytotoxic and kill all other plants underneath them. Woody aliens grow too fast, they add to higher fuel loads and much more frequent and much hotter fires that damage watercourses and rivers by shading out natural species. You don't have to be a purist to understand that there's a problem. What do we lose out? This is a picture of hessias that came up in Cape Point 2 years ago. Now, these hessias came up in an area that used to be wall-to-wall acacia. These are the sorts of things that we lose when we sit with these highly infested areas. We lose species diversity. We lose plants and pollinator species. All of these photos are taken in the Southern Peninsula and or around Scarborough. This is on Plateau Road. We have more frequent fires, which burn hotter and longer. This forest along Plateau Road, I just am so nervous. These kinds of fires are absolutely devastating. Here's an example of, this is in Australia. This is not local, but it was one of the best photos I could show to show what riverbanks look like after infestation in our country, look like after infestation with eucalypts that shade out and kill all other plant species. We damage, we alter watercourses, we reduce our sustainability, and we impede our resilience to all sorts of things. What happens in our garden doesn't always stay in our garden. It's taken out of our garden by birds, by wind and what have you. Our alien weeds and our invasive ornamentals spread to other gardens and into natural areas. We, as gardeners, as homeowners, as interested people, can actually prevent this by controlling these spaces. And when you think that the Cape Peninsula is home to over 2,500 indigenous plant species, every single type of habitat that you can possibly imagine on this peninsula, there's a plant for that. So whatever kind of rainfall you have, whatever kind of soil you have, there's something there that can make your property just look simply amazing. It might not be a little rose garden, but it will be phenomenal. Here are a few things. I'll put this out as a PDF as well, but just a couple of web pages and further reading. There are lots and lots of very good articles on the issues around alien invasives. There's lots of resources that can help. I'll make sure that all of this is available to the Scarboroughs. And just in closing, another little photo of an indigenous geranium from the Schusterskral. And yeah, let's just try and keep it local. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful, thanks, Leah. Very clear call to arms is we need persuading of us each taking action. I think the next two speakers are going to give us some suggestions on what we can do at a practical level and what some of our colleagues are doing. So next, Jess, you're going to share some examples of what's happening, I think, up in Red Hill. Jess.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Lee and Louise. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So I've got involved with this alien species conversation, even though my background is not in ecology, it's actually in psychology. I live on Red Hill, so above all of you in Scarborough, and I know a little farm called Winford that some of you know. And I've noticed, particularly this winter that's been so cold, that more and more people have started coming out into the bush and been ring barking or otherwise chopping the already dead mametes and other protea species, particularly because they provide obviously the most amount of wood. And in the space of less than a year, really in 6 months in this winter, all of the big protea trees that are literally across from my house and on the valley across from me have disappeared, almost all the way to Grootkorp actually. So that's a huge tract of land that's been cleared because people have need for wood, both for cooking and for warmth, and increasingly so with load shedding. So I got thinking about what could happen, that people could get hold of wood, but without having to come into the fynbos and chop indigenous species, and knowing how much alien species are already around on the farms here and also in Scarborough itself, it seemed like a good opportunity to link two existing problems and create a solution out of them. So Kelson and I got together and had a chat, and it sounded like there were already a whole lot of teams doing good work in clearing alien invasives around Scarbs. And so the invitation has gone out now to the community itself and beyond Scarborough for people wanting to get involved in clearing alien trees, especially now having a bit more information from Louise and Lee about the impact on a grand scale and also just on a small scale. So the opportunity is to cut down invasives, the strong invasives, and to replace them with indigenous species, both from a water conservation point and also then because that can then come back into a system, and that wood is now being transported up to Red Hill. And we've identified 4 women, each one in each camp, so A, B, C, and D, and drop sites, and the wood is now being taken up there and coordinated with by these women, and made sure that we particularly chose women because some of the men with entrepreneurial spirits would rather sell the wood, and that's a separate project that's happening with some of the clearers. Yeah, so the women making sure that the gogos, particularly needing wood for fire and for fuel and for cooking and warmth, are getting it, and the housing that's mostly needing it and that have been clearing the protest species are the first to get the wood. Yeah, so we're asking everybody to see that as another lovely invitation to support people and plants, planet, water, by clearing your own trees, and get in touch with us and how to get them up to Red Hill. And that's it.
Wonderful, thanks, Jess. Will you be sharing contacts, or perhaps we can take that up in the discussion, how we can take this forward at a practical level, what we can each individually do to engage with you and to take this forward, or perhaps that's something that Kelson will be coordinating through SEG.
Yeah, I think through the Scarborough Environmental Group would be best, just to coordinate rather than having a whole lot of people arriving at once at Red Hill. Yeah, so brilliant. Get in touch with this environmental group. Excellent,
thanks Jess. We're going to hold back on questions. I think Mark is going to share some thoughts. Mark. Thank you, Jess. Mark, over to you.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I've been in Scarborough for a long time, so landscaping here, I've seen things change. I mean, from early days when they planted most of those eucalypts on Seagull Road because of the very shallow groundwater that was there. So there's an inherent history that belongs in Scarborough. But for us that have been here a long time, Scarborough didn't have many trees. It was very bare. It was very windswept. There's a totally different ecology to what we're talking about now. Now most of the plots already got houses in. So initially I would have said, planting trees was a hard journey, because whatever survived was purely because you planted the right tree in the right place, in the right format. And the biggest problem people do is they plant trees, solitary trees, like they'd be used to somewhere else in suburban gardens. In Scarborough, it's just not valid. With the wind and everything else that we have here, things want to grow in clumps. It's a completely different case scenario. So it's very interesting also your choice of trees here. So yeah, looking at Scarborough now with so many houses here and a lot of the trees become established. I mean, we've done our best through the years to steer people towards planting indigenous, but we know there's always that need for instant success. So the tree that grows the fastest, the quickest, the one that's going to hide the neighbor the fastest, and there's no consideration necessarily for how much water it's using or what the impact is going to be on the rest of it. It's just, I need this now. And people all say, well, I'm not going to live another 20 years, so why should I plant another tree that's, yeah, I mean, I planted milkwoods in my garden, and they are huge. They're really beautifully established trees. Just because we cared for them, they've grown really well. If I look at the ones around the road verges that we planted, I think it was also about 20 years ago, they are, yeah, with depending on what the exposure, they have not been quite as successful because they were planted as solitary trees. So it's again going back to the example of fynbos grows so well because it's diverse, it grows all together, tightly together. It's almost like it, I see it as a community of plants. And in a way, the forest patches that you're going to try and create in your garden would be the same thing. It would be like a little community of plants. So not just I'm planting trees now, but it's how can I plant so that these other plants, which grow quite easily, can support the trees that I want in the long term. So we have a much longer term vision for Scarborough. And I think that's something that we can all look at. So even though at the moment the priority we're actually discussing is making sure we get rid of all the aliens out of Scarborough, because that to me should be a given already. The next question is, how can we plant the right tree in the right place? You'll find most of us landscapers, we end up having to fix the wrong tree planted in the wrong place. And that is continually one of the problems we end up having. So I urge everyone, it doesn't cost much to just get informed, to instead of just going out and planting or you know, just getting somebody who's not actually knowledgeable about what plants are planting. Rather, you can go to Good Hope Nursery, they're quite informative, or any of the nurseries, or you can call in a landscaper, Tom, me, there's a few of us in the village, and we can easily guide you into what would be the right plant, the right tree for the right place. So when we replace those trees, yeah, we can at least get our, because I mean, look, in the long term, Scarborough's never going to be a fynbos area. We can plant things backwards and forwards, but it's never going to burn through the village. So in the long term, I think planting trees is going to become more and more common, and Scarborough will become more and more forested as the years go by. As you already noticed, it is. I don't know, for the people that have been here for a long time, they'll notice it's a dramatic difference already. Yeah, so my invitation to everyone is, yeah, not to be too hasty, to get informed, and you can save yourself a lot of money by planting the right trees, because Scarborough with its wind, yeah, the amount of trees I've seen that were planted that have not succeeded is quite high. So if we can stick to what grows locally, it's obviously best. And within that, I mean, there's quite a spectrum to choose from. So yeah, that is my invitation. Let's do it the right way, and try not to be considerate to our neighbors, because that is another thing. You know, planting a big tree, you know, yeah, could be a complete detriment to your neighbors' homes. Right.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Thanks, Mark. Some clear recommendations for us. You know, get active, and from all of you, get active in helping to get rid of aliens and be smart in terms of what we're planting. I'm going to ask: are there questions? I have a few, but are there anybody wants to raise any questions of the speakers? Either put your hand up or just chip in, or raise a comment on the chat function. Anybody want to raise a question? Just you can press the hand button, or you can just speak.
Okay, I just got a message there from Hans about asking about yellowwoods in Scarborough. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to just delineate that there's obviously there's quite a few different kinds of yellowwoods, but the Otaniqua yellowwoods, they do grow here in Scarborough, but they really need to be put into a forest pocket. So you really need to have space for them, and you need to be able to nurture them. The real yellowwood is better adapted, but again, it's a very big forest tree, and the forests generally get a lot more rainfall than what we do in Scarborough. Scarborough's got very low rainfall. So unless you're prepared to nurture them and water them, yeah, they're not the easiest. I do have one in my garden, and it's growing quite fine, but it's not as profuse as some of the other trees. The other trees just really take off and do yeah, grow really well.
Mark,
Any more questions?
And any of the other speakers, in your experience, the advice that one gets from some of the garden centres, you know, one goes down to the one that's down the road here, and in quite some degree of ignorance, you can say, I want to take this tree. Do you think that they're quite active in promoting this awareness and agenda, or are they more reactive and say, well, we're going to meet what the customer needs? Do you think there's a stronger role that they could play in encouraging us in terms of what we plant? Mark, if you want to start off, and anybody else want to share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's always a question of, you know, the people that have actually planted things out and have seen it through the years, and what succeeds and don't succeed is not necessarily your local person at the nursery, who basically is just sitting there in an environment whereby they're growing what they grow there, but they don't necessarily see how it impacts outside or how well it grows under which conditions. Yet in the same breath, I found every nursery in our local, in the deep south here, they also have people who know what they're talking about. So I think the main thing is not just to take any Tom, Dick, or Harry's recommendation, but to rather make sure that you can speak to somebody who has real experience. That would be my recommendation.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions from colleagues? Otherwise, I'm gonna ask Louise, if Louise is still there. You gave a fairly sobering assessment of the extent of the challenge. I mean, are you optimistic in terms of the funding being found and the level of engagement being coming in from business and from government and from other parties, either Louise or Lee? Do you see us addressing these issues as a province and nationally, working for water in these different parties? Are they coming together? Is this happening? Are we optimistic?
Yeah, John, I am optimistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been doing this job. It is something we have to turn the tide, and we have agreement from the key in the key organizations, Cape Nature, who manages most of the land, who just can't get to everything because wildfires also play havoc with regeneration of seedlings. Province, there's an agreement that we have to do something differently, and I'm optimistic that we will get it right. And let's see how it goes. Private sector is on board. So far, private sector invested the largest part of last year's funding. For about 86% of the funding of last year comes from the private sector. So we have great big donors, and it's all about replenishment. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, they use water, so they want to they have this thing of they want to replenish the water that they take out of the system, and they're very honest about it. So we managed to get some great funding from that. COVID played a bit of havoc, but I'm optimistic that we will get it right.
Hi, John. Can I come in?
Please go for it. Of course, go for it, Kel.
Yes, I just want to chat with the village that, you know, we do have access to, I don't know if people's aware, but there is like this, Cape Town have this nursery in Newlands, and they do allow communities to have access to the trees that, you know, indigenous trees that they grow there. So yeah, we can kind of get about 25 indigenous trees per year to plant in community ground. So just a quick one to the village. If anyone have a tree, alien tree in the verge, you know, that would like to be replaced by indigenous tree, so please be in touch with us, and we can look into. Yeah, so we just do a replacement, you know. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Kelson. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Raise a hand. So I'm not seeing any. Just Kelson, following on from what Jess said, I assume there's if there's those of us that want to go out and help and do something proactive in terms of getting rid of aliens. I understand there is a group that's doing that. Is there something, Kelson, that we can do? People that are on the call and and rustle up some of our friends to come and do something practical? What's the way forward on that?
Yes, I think like we should kind of fine tune the system. That's we're struggling a little bit to find the, basically we've been talking with all the the gardeners that clean alien vegetation. So we're making sure that when someone wants to cut alien vegetation, that's be in touch with someone in Red Hill. In a practical way, be in touch with us. We'd like to, maybe come around, we have a look, what's the story, and just try to do the connection, I see most of the people have our WhatsApp number, and just be in touch with us. I think that would be the easy way from the beginning until we really have the system works.
Thanks, Kelson. I see there's a question here from Cullen. I think, well, for Louise or perhaps also for Jess, there's a huge amount of alien vegetation growing in the mountains around Red Hill, Dido Valley, etc., which is largely unchecked.
I can respond to that. Lots of it is the fire that we had caused a lot of regeneration. So some of it is on private land, lots of it on road verges, which is the city's responsibility. But then there's also private landowners who are not clearing the invasives. There is a biosecurity unit national program, but they overstretch. They don't have enough people to issue notices. Private landowners maybe can allow Jess and people who are from Red Hill access to their land to clear it. But I have a question about the need for wood. So if we clear invasives, what about the people who will forever need wood? They're clearing indigenous, they're collecting protea, whatever is around. So Lee and Cullen and others who are experts here, I'm always thinking about woodlots. We have biocontrol on Rooikrans, we have biocontrol on Port Jackson, and if one manages, you almost like a forest, you don't apply herbicides, you put a certain area out as a woodlot so that people can harvest, because we cannot fool ourselves. Once that source is gone, they will still try and find wood. So it's maybe a challenge, and maybe something that we can discuss, make plans. I'm happy to join the discussion and see if we can find a solution for the long term.
If I could butt in there, John.
Please go.
Go for this. Permission. Just in response to Louise about the idea of woodlots, one of the things that was very interesting in the Northern Cape, there was a fantastic project which looked at precisely that, because of overcollection of wood in a very arid environment. And one of the things that they found was some of the species that grew up in that area were absolutely ideal as not species that you cut down, but species that re-sprouted. So you had a continually productive plant that kept producing wood. You would cut branches off, but you'd only cut so much off, and the re-sprout growth was so vigorous that it would provide wood almost in perpetuity. And one of the genera, one of the genuses, was in fact the same as our Taibos. At that point, Rus, it's now Ceasia. What's in the name? But the Taibos, some of the Taibos species, and there are similar species around here that we could potentially set up indigenous woodlots that actually are highly productive and that are specifically set aside as something like that, which wouldn't necessarily be a nicely or beautifully natural environment. However, it would be, if they spread, it's not as much of a crisis as having acacias or what have you. Thank you.
Great, thanks Lee. Any other comments or queries from anybody? There's, of course, I can see there's some very favorable comments, understandably, from everybody on group chat on the quality of the inputs that we've had. If there aren't any more comments or queries, then it is 7 o'clock, which I think is a good time to wrap this up and go and have supper. I'd just like to thank Kelson. I think you pulled this together, Kelson. Absolutely brilliant. really good sharing of information and a call to action. And hopefully we're going to see some rallying of our colleagues in helping you all on this. So perhaps I'll hand over to you, Kelson, to call it to an end. Kelson.
Wow, it was amazing, guys. Thanks so much. It was so inspiring to see everybody come together. And yeah, we just plant a seed here, and I'm sure we can, yeah, something beautiful gonna come out of that. So thanks, everyone. Amazing evening. We have to do that. Thanks, John. You're a star, man. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Kelson.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Cheers,
Cheers, guys.
Colin.
Thanks, bye.